Well, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Henry McCorkle, Director of Global Membership with the Middle States Association. And I want to begin by welcoming everyone to today's open house. Before I continue, I do want to let everyone know that this event is being recorded for future use. So if this makes anyone uncomfortable, you are welcome to exit the webinar at this time. Also, given the fact that today's presentation is a webinar, if you have any questions, we encourage you to type them into the chat, and we will be sure to address those questions towards the end of the presentation today. If in the event we run out of time and we're not able to get to your question today, then we'll be sure to follow up with you following today's presentation. Today, you'll get a chance to hear from a panel of educators representing some outstanding career and technical schools that the Middle States Association accredits. Our three fantastic panelists, who you will hear from in just a few minutes, are Mr. Jay Fund, President of Hunter Business School, Mr. Jeff Gonzalez, owner at Elite Schools of Cosmetology, and Dr. Allen Hawkins, owner-director at Purpose Medical Institute. I know you're all excited about our panel, but before we jump into that, I'd like to just share a brief overview and history of the Middle States Association to provide some context for today's discussion. So the Middle States Association has been around for over 130 years. And throughout the association's long history, Middle States has been helping school leaders establish and reach their goals, develop strategic plans, promote staff development, and advance student achievement. Our goal is to help each school become the best version of themselves through a process that fosters growth and improvement. We believe that education is important to the quality of life in our global society. We believe that all schools can achieve excellence in both teaching and learning through innovation. We believe that the process of self-assessment, external validation, and accountability is essential to school improvement. And we believe that accreditation is a collaborative partnership grounded in professionally recognized and accepted research-based standards. As an institutional accreditor, we utilize a set of 5 standards to affirm to the public a school's commitment to continuous improvement in all areas. Everything from teaching and learning components, such as curriculum and assessment, to governance and organization, to resources, which include facilities and finances. At the Middle States Association, we also believe in the importance of peer review. All of our accreditation visits are led by volunteers, the majority of whom are from other MSA accredited schools. One benefit of pursuing accreditation with Middle States and joining our membership is the opportunity to participate on these accreditation visits to other schools. For many years, Middle States was a regional accreditor, meaning that the association only accredited schools from about New York State down to Washington, D.C. However, as of July 1, 2020, the U.S. Department of Education recognized Middle States as an institutional accreditor for career and technical programs nationwide. This meant that career and technical schools throughout the U.S. could now use Middle States accreditation to establish eligibility to participate in federal Title IV student loan programs for adult students. So since July 1, 2020, we've received numerous inquiries from career and technical institutions all over the country. And we've added some outstanding CT schools to our membership network. From our headquarters in Philadelphia, we work with approximately 2,700 member institutions in nearly all 50 states, as well as more than 100 countries worldwide. Now that you've had a chance to learn a bit about Middle States, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Glenn Mort, Executive Vice President, who's going to talk more in depth about MSA's processes of accreditation for CT schools, and then we'll moderate our panel discussion. Dr. Mort?
Thank you, Henry. What a terrific overview of the Middle States Association. Thank you for that comprehensive look at what we do and how we do it. And thank all of you for joining us today as well. As Henry said, my name is Dr. Glenn Mort. I am currently the Executive Vice President of the Middle States Association, part of the senior leadership team here. And before I talk a little bit about the process, I think it's important that you know a little bit about my background. I sat in the very chair that you are sitting in today. Prior to joining Middle States almost a decade ago, I was a head of school for a adult post-secondary non-degree granting institution for about 15 years. So I understand what you're going through. I understand your day-to-day struggles. And I think it's important that you know that there is someone at senior leadership here at Middle States that understands what it's like to run a post-secondary non-degree granting school. But again, thank you, Henry, for that introduction. So it's my task to talk with you a little bit about the process that new schools coming to Middle States will go through. We have two different pathways that a school could take that is available to career and technical schools. For newer CT schools that are not currently accredited, the process would occur in two phases. The first phase would be candidacy, followed up by accreditation. So the first step involves completing a registration form, an online registration form, directly through our website. Very easy to do. Once we receive and review the registration form, we will send you a candidacy application for you to complete. That application will allow us to take a look at what you do and how you do it, but more importantly, it'll introduce you to the Middle States 5 standards that Henry was just talking about a few minutes ago. And it asks you to look inward to provide information to us about where you think you currently are in relation to those 5 standards. It's important to know that you don't necessarily need to meet all those 5 standards at the candidacy level, and that's what the process of candidacy is all about. So once we receive the school's completed candidacy application from you, two things will happen. The first thing that'll happen is you will be assigned a staff liaison. We call them accreditation liaisons, and they are members of the staff, and their title with us is Associate Vice President of Accreditation. So you will have somebody that you're going to be able to work with one-on-one as you go through the entire process. The second thing that'll happen is we will schedule a one-day candidacy visit, and that accreditation liaison will come to your school and validate what you say you're doing in your accreditation application, candidacy application, and talk with you a little bit about areas that he or she feels that you need to do in order to successfully host a visiting team once the self-study has been completed. So once the candidacy visit is completed, that staff liaison will make a recommendation to senior leadership. Usually it goes to my desk. I will review your application along with the recommendation from your associate vice president, and if everything is validated, you will be offered candidacy at that point. So then you will be sent an offer of candidacy. Once you sign that offer and send it back, then you are considered a candidate for accreditation with the Middle States Association. Immediately, you will be able to begin the self-study process. The purpose of the self-study is to lead you through a systematic and thorough self-examination and self-assessment to determine the quality of your educational programs and the quality of the results you are achieving in terms of student performance. ultimately it provides an opportunity for an institution to reflect on what is going well in your school, what could be improved, and together we will put together a plan for growth and improvement to put you on a continual path for continual improvement. So after the institution completes your self-study, the next step, as I mentioned earlier, is to host a visiting team led by a team of educators from other Middle States accredited schools. During this multi-day visit, the team will validate the findings in your self-study and make recommendations for growth and improvement. A report will be prepared by the visiting team and the chair, and it will be submitted to the Middle States staff. Now, following the team visit, the Middle States Association has a multi-tier review process for all team reports to ensure consistency, objectivity, and quality. So the recommendations made by your visiting team will be reviewed by a Middle States staff member. The next tier would be your team report, and that staff analysis will be reviewed by an advisory committee. Then that's sent to a subcommittee of our commission, which is the membership and an accreditation subcommittee. And then finally, the Middle States Commissions will hear the accreditation recommendation from the visiting team, the staff analysis, and the advisory committee, along with the subcommittee, and only the commission can take accreditation action at that point. So once a school becomes accredited, the term of accreditation is for 10 years. So that's one pathway. So for a school that's never been accredited or is new to accreditation and has the desire to become accredited, that would be the typical pathway. There is a second pathway for schools that are already accredited by another accrediting institution, and that's a process that we call recognition. So the first step in the recognition process is exactly the same as the candidacy. You're going to complete a registration form on our website. So for schools pursuing recognition, once we receive and renew the registration form, we will send schools an application for membership to complete. Along with that application, we will ask you to submit several things. Your most recent self-study and visiting team report from your current accrediting agency, and any evidence and follow-up materials related to that team visit. The second thing is we're going to ask for documentation of the validity and the expiration of the term of accreditation you have with your current accreditation agency. And once we receive these things, along with your application, we will review the information, and very similarly, we will set up a one-day recognition visit. The Associate Vice President or accreditation liaison will visit your school, go through the same process, and make the same recommendation to myself or the president of the Middle States Association. The recognition status at the commission meeting, and then you will immediately enter self-study. Again, go through the same process, and once awarded, your accreditation term will be for the next 10 years. So there are fees associated with candidacy and recognition. They are exactly the same. So there is a $650 application fee associated with either pathway. And once a school becomes a candidate, then you are invoiced your annual dues, and that's when your annual dues will start. So with either process, schools will be asked to reimburse your visiting member for their transportation, their food, and their lodging costs. So the main difference, as I just mentioned, between the two processes is that recognition gives the school that is already accredited the opportunity to become accredited with Middle States a little bit more quickly than they would if they pursued the traditional method. And once an institution is accredited through either process, they are expected to adhere to all Middle States standards and submit an annual report. They're also expected to pay their annual membership dues and fees and nominate volunteers to participate on other schools' team accreditation visits. So that, I just wanted to start by giving you a quick overview of the process, but that's not why you are here. You are here to hear directly from our esteemed panel. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, share a little bit about their particular school, and their experience with going through the Middle States accreditation process. So why don't we start with Jay? Why don't you introduce yourself and your school, Jay?
Hi, and good afternoon for everybody who's on the East Coast. My name is Jay Fund. I'm the president and owner of Hunter Business School. We have 2 locations on Long Island, which is in New York. I've been in post-secondary education for approximately 39 years and as a school director. And then about 23 years ago, I purchased Hunter Business School. We had about 30 students in there. Now we've grown to about 700, and we have 2 locations again on Long Island. And the development happened not because of me, but because of a nice team that was developed, which I know you all are aware of. That the only way to grow is with a team. Our programs vary from medical assistant to allied health to computer repair and to web design. The program lengths range from 180 hours to over 2,300 hours. And we can, in New York, because we are not a college, we can only give out certificates. Approximately 6 years ago, I was a member of MSA-CESS for many, many years. And because of MSA-CESS issues and needing to move on, I found going to Middle States was a breath of fresh air. And I went through that process of recognition with the Middle States, became a member of Middle States, of course, and now I'm very happy that I've joined them, and I became a commissioner for Middle States. And the nice thing about Middle States is that unlike traditional accrediting bodies, they look at accountability that makes sense. And they ask you, as Glenn was talking about, is to look at your facility, look at your school, look at your functions and your programs, and see how that could be improved. So that's my story.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Gonzalez, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your schools?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Gonzalez. I came into career education. It kind of fell into me, and I fell into it, and I enjoyed, developing young people throughout my time in the Marine Corps for 8 years. In 2007, I started in the industry. My schools have been around for 15 years. We operate in multiple states. It was a seamless process with Middle States, and kind of a no-brainer as soon as it opened. Not to say other accreditors don't offer that, and they're very good. What I particularly enjoy is the ability to navigate their processes a little more smoothly. It's not just about the school management. It's more about your growth plan encompassed in your school management. And I have programs in the beauty industry. We have cosmetologists, full specialist, esthetician, advanced manicurist. And we look to expand scope as well. And I was kind of limited with the accreditor we were with at the time. And I was a little nervous about the transition as well. The accreditor I had, was only focused on the beauty program, and the needs of the community asked for other things that we operate in, and they really work hand in hand with you to be that calm hand in rough waters when you're navigating this. I do have to compliment their fees. They operate as a true nonprofit. The fees are extremely reasonable. I'll give you an example. And, when I went through reaccreditation, maybe 3 years ago, I paid $34,000 when it was all said and done. Astronomical for smaller schools to be able to manage that. At Middle States, I didn't find that. So I think that's a key point to understand. They also, anytime I've tried to reach out with a question, they've been there. I've been able to reach out to commissioners necessary. They always have a listening ear for you. and provide the help. So I was a little bit nervous about also the percentages and how does that work and what's the functionality. They walked me through it. You know, they it was very reasonable, handled just like any other creditor. However, you know, they have a strong understanding of where we're at. Dr. Mort sitting in a seat, he's from our industry, and I can't compliment him enough, and the other commissioners that sit on the commission currently.
Terrific. Well, thank you for the kind words, Mr. Gonzalez. I appreciate that. So hopefully we made that transition nice and smooth for you, and you're going to be with Middle States for quite a while.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Dr. Hawkins, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your schools?
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Allen Hawkins. I am the owner and president of Purpose Education, LLC, which actually owns Purpose Medical Institute, Purpose IT, and Purpose Business. So for our medical institution, we actually range from medical assisting to phlebotomy, EKG, and various other courses. We're a little different, and I'll talk more about that as we proceed through the actual call. But instead of being a programmatic school, we're actually what the state of Texas calls a seminar college. And so our courses are very much abbreviated. So 10 weeks with no more than 24 weeks. And so for me, you know, the career college industry is actually where I found my best fit. My experience ranges from degree granting, including Middle States, the regional accrediting body, to chief academic officer, professor, campus director, career services and placement, admissions, business office, director of financial aid, and the list goes on. And so for me, as I launched Purpose Education, really Purpose Medical, the concept of being accredited by Middle States was at the time beyond my imagination, only because I had seen and been exposed to the darker side of education, which if any of you have been in the industry for, you know, more than 10 or 15 years, you know that at one point we were under attack and under siege, even with the institutions who were doing the best or operating with the standard amount of conduct and, you know, the best practices. It didn't matter. We were widely labeled. And unfortunately, being exposed to that in the Department of Education and taking over other institutions with acquisitions and so forth, the principles that Middle States stands on was not only refreshing, but it was also rejuvenating. Because from the standards and the pillars and the team and so forth, I got to see the way the best image of what accreditation should be. And not only that, but also the hand holding as you walk through the process. And so I will tell you that we are a tremendous fan. We were recently accredited as well, which is we had a whole celebration with the students and staff, only because the process is not only worth your due diligence, but it's also a timely investment in your students, your staff, and the overall institution as a whole. So with that being said, I'm excited to have you all here. I look forward to your questions, and I encourage you to just listen with open ears, you know, ask very candid questions as we proceed, because the three of us sitting here have all been through the process and are excited to hopefully have you join us.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. You know, and my takeaway is, and those of you that have known me for a while, the fact that you celebrate it with both your staff and your students makes me smile. So we are all about that celebration.
Absolutely.
So congratulations. So I'm going to ask Jay, I'm going to ask you the first question. Please share with us how accreditation with Middle States has impacted your school, helped you reach your goals, and helped you address any challenges that your school may be facing.
Okay, well, first, congratulations to all the school owners and presidents and directors for surviving these last couple of years during COVID. It takes a tremendous amount of strength and fortitude, and you should all be getting a pat on the back or whatever you want, a handshake for being so successful. The nice thing about being with Middle States, and I always like to compare to other accrediting bodies that I've been with, is that when you start with Middle States, you have a mission, you have a goal, you have to do certain things, and you keep that in front of you. Even though when times are turbulent, you keep on pushing towards that direction. Although it's easy to get diverted, you keep on holding on to that. And Middle States was understanding about that. I know we had meetings about placement rates and financial statements. And, some schools have not been as successful as others during this transition. And I think Middle States understands that everything cannot be all roses and stuff like that. And it will look to see, where is your strength? Will you be able to build up? What do you have in place that will build up? And they allow you to move in that direction. They give you that space to change, to make things better, which is probably the most important thing. Again, I'm in New York, and one of the things that happens when you're a school in New York is that they don't give you that space. New York is very restrictive. Some of you people are in different states and you think your state is restrictive. Well, I know for a fact that New York is very restrictive and very difficult to work in. And to have middle states there to support you in their transitions is a blessing. I know that just recently, New York gave us permission to do hybrid for the last 2 years, basically. But the curtain drops on December 31st. So everybody has to transition with the federal government and with New York State to change if you're going to stay hybrid, or you're going to stay face-to-face, whatever. And Middle States has been very cooperative and helpful for us to make that transition to the state and then to the federal government. That's it.
Thank you, Jay. Dr. Hawkins, I'm going to ask you the same question. Could you just share with us how Middle States has impacted your school, helped you reach some goals that you might have had, and helped you address challenges that your school might have faced?
Absolutely. So first, I'll piggyback off of Jay's description of the state of New York. So our institution, we reside in Texas, Dallas specifically. And for those of you who may not be familiar, Texas is a extremely highly regulated career college and school system as far as the state goes. And so specifically, we have a entity called Texas Workforce Commission of Career Schools and Colleges. And so in order to even operate, you have to be licensed by the state specifically in order to move forward with enrollment and so forth. The benefit is the agency itself is very much student centric. The challenge is they are typically institution or school skeptical, which means everything comes under a microscope. And oftentimes, if there's an issue or concern or any type of challenge, they're more likely to immediately launch investigatory measures or dig deeper into the institution without providing means or measures for enhancement or improvement to the institution. Throughout this process, what I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most, and really from the initial candidacy application, was the interaction. From the moment I received an email or emailed with Henry to my first interaction with Dr. Mort, and I'm not sure if he's on the call, but Daniel Rufo became like my best friend because we called, talked, and text throughout the entire process. I was sending emails at 11 o'clock at night. They were, what about this? What about that? And so, but the reason I mentioned that type of interaction was because as I walked through this process and the overall outcomes, what I saw was the brand recognition and awareness of the overall Dallas community. So with the concept of licensing in the state of Texas, you don't have to be accredited to operate. So because of that, I'd roughly say 80% of career-oriented institutions in the city are not accredited. And so now when you compare our institution just by definition, let alone the standards, our credentials stand out, which has also made us a community awareness partner. So for example, we've had the opportunity to build fellowships and community partnerships with three of the biggest hospitals in the city, because not only are we accredited, but we're also licensed and have all these other national credentials, which is very unique. And so that would not have been possible without Middle States, but throughout the actual reflection process, what I enjoyed was the ability for my committee to identify blind spots. And so that's a phrase that we use with students frequently. And a blind spot is simply an area where I think I'm doing the right thing. It looks good in mind and thought, but is it actually being executed in practice? And so walking through those standards, the team was able to troubleshoot and give me a secondary, even a tertiary perspective of, okay, if you're going about the process, what about this? Or have you looked at that? Or do you have a contingency? That's what I valued and my team valued the most, is because the out-of-box thinking allowed us to grow and enhance, which is literally increased our enrollment. as well as our staff, as well as all of these other concepts that wouldn't have been possible without that process. So the brand awareness, just the overall pride of life with students being able to say that the institution is accredited. And lastly, just the quality assurance. I know that our standard operating procedure lives up to a concept of middle states that I know is continuously being reviewed, assessed for improvement and growth. And that's all you could ask for your institution.
Thank you, Lee Allen. Jeff, I'm going to ask you the next question.
Sure.
That question is, given the fact that Middle States accredits many different types of institutions, including the schools we're talking about today, the career and tech schools, can you share how the accreditation process was designed and adapted to meet the unique needs of your institutions?
Absolutely. Well, in a unique situation, when I'll go back a minute. I attended University of Maryland, did both my undergrad and graduate work. My postgraduate work was at Wharton and in Syracuse. So the only thing I knew really about middle states was the higher ed side and how prestigious, and it was started at Princeton. And that was one of my big concerns too. I have a beauty school, it's vocational, it's hands-on. Does middle states, can they entertain, our needs, and are we a good marriage? And so I looked into it further, and I talked, with yourself and Henry, Dr. Mort. And I think that was one of my largest concerns, coming in as a longtime owner, and what a prestigious thing and an opportunity. However, is it best for the institution? And I see that Middle States has commissioners that covers every single area, 20 plus. Correct me if I'm wrong. And right now we have on as the panelist, you can see there's a medical school, there's a business school, and there's a beauty school. And the other concern was, are they open to the multi-states as a system, of campuses that operate in multiple states? Well, that was all accommodated. And the standards really match what our needs are, and we can adhere to those in our standard operating procedures very, very, very well. It excited my team. It opened up new doors for them to have additional input in things that, we focus on, but we took a deeper dive, and it really, really has brought prestige to the school, even more so. Everyone's excited about it. It's created an environment where everybody, not that the previous processes hadn't included some people, but this includes everyone, to include the students and all the stakeholders in the community and the stakeholders within the campus. And it just brings that opportunity for us to thrive in the communities we operate in. And Middle States really does a good job with their standards to meeting our needs. I have not seen one standard that would be an obstacle as going through it, the process, being able to ask the questions, as Leanne just said before, or Lee Allen, I'm sorry, Middle States was right there. Every time I had a question or concern, my staff, myself, and still to this day, it's not like once you're accredited, you're cut off. We've had other visits we've done on private schools outside of our scope, but the common bond is the standards meet the needs for all these different types of institutions, and especially mine. I can speak to mine specifically, and I can speak to the ones we've visited.
Thank you, Jeff. Jay, the same question to you. Has the accreditation process, has it been designed or adapted to meet any unique needs that you may have had at your schools?
Yeah, reemphasize the issue of being have diversity in programs. We all know as business people that it's good to have diversity. If something happens like back in the maybe sometime in the 80s when we had a scare that the medical assistant program sort of like died, and then we had to go towards something else. So it's always good to have other programs that will keep your business surviving, your school surviving. So I think that's what Middle States gives you, that diversity. The other part of it is the outcomes. We always know that when we talked about the political environment, that make sure that our outcomes are to the highest standards possible. And I think that over time, you know, we strive to make it better and better and better. In the last year or two, you know, we sometimes dropped. I know that Hunter dropped maybe about 5-10% in our placement rates because of people just didn't want to go to work or whatever reason that they had. And so, you know, we still had to maintain at least a 70%, but we dropped a little bit, and Middle States understood that. So it's important to, again, to see that Middle States has a realistic view of what schools are doing, what the environment is pushing, and stuff like that. The one other thing that I wanted to talk about is that even though you may have, I'm not sure if you talked about it, Glenn, it's a 10-year accreditation. Each year you have to do a report, and the report hits out on outcomes and missions and standards, and you move along and you keep that in front of you, so making sure that you hit those numbers. And then at the end of the, I think at the 5-year point, if you're lucky enough to get the 10-year, there's a much more in-depth self-study. So it's there is work to do, but it's good, solid work that keeps you focused and trained that this is your goal to keep on pushing. You know, we tell our students, look at the end of the rainbow, it's going to be there. Well, you know, the end of the rainbow happens as long as you keep maintaining that focus and drive to make it work for your school and for yourselves.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jay. I'm going to ask all three panelists the next question. We'll start with Dr. Hawkins. Can you share with us any specific or noteworthy achievements or accomplishments that the Middle States process has assisted your school in achieving?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the medical side specifically. Once we had completed the process for actual accreditation and were approved, we had also submitted applications to a couple of different national certification agencies because an added component of our courses, our seminar courses, is we actually pay for students to take the national certification exam for their various professions. And with us, we're very unique in that our motivation for even attempting to be accredited with Middle States was not Title IV funding. We don't do Title IV funding. It was actually just the concept of having a higher expectation and standard for our own accountability as an institution. And so with that being said, once we actually received our accreditation, we had not one, not two, but 3 different national agencies reach back out to us and say, we'd love for you to partner. We'd love to partner with you and your students regarding career services as well as their national certification. We'll do a simple discount and so forth. From there, we marketed, you know, our accreditation status on our website and so forth. And as I mentioned before, we had at least 2 hospitals reach out to us saying, hey, we have these openings for your students. We'd love to partner with you as far as new level or entry level students coming in or experienced students. And also, do you have a workforce development course where we can send current employees over to your institution? And so, and all of these things occurred in about a 90-day period. Again, beyond our imagination, literally becoming a household name due to the notoriety. And overall, I would honestly say that would not be possible without the accreditation status, because again, with Texas and the overall state being the TWC, the workforce being the agency that regulates, having an accreditation standard that goes above and beyond just speaks even more volume to the capacity that the institution has. So without Middle States, we certainly wouldn't be able to service our students in the way that we're doing now. We actually have students who are offered positions as early as their 5th week in a 10-week course, even prior to graduation and completion. And again, that would not be possible without Middle States.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Jeff, were there any noteworthy achievements or accomplishments that we helped you with?
I gotta say, overall, with the whole process, you know, specifically for my staff, like Dr. Hawkins had mentioned, we had the same kind of reception from the community. Oh, wow, Middle States. You know, they had heard of Middle States. They knew who Middle States was, the prestige behind it. You know, I mean, not specific awards, but achievements with our student body, the recognition, you know, we had Title IV institutions for a long time here, and you know, oh, it's beauty school. Well, this is a Middle States accredited beauty school. Let's talk to them a little bit more about what they're about. You know, maybe we have some workforce dollars specifically too. I could mention this: the Seminole tribes, huge in Florida. They immediately wanted to work with us. You know, and that happened while we were going through the process, and you know, they'll just you know, they're very particular, want everything but your blood type, you know, to approve. And when they saw Middle States, it was an instant meeting with the tribe, and they began sending students to us immediately.
Terrific. That's great news. Jay, anything noteworthy or anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think through the accreditation process, we had to come up with handbooks on, you know, how do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do this? You know, and it was not something that I was accustomed to, you know, because I like to do things, you know, by the seat of the pants in some ways, but this gave us the impetus that we had to put these manuals together and to make sure that we have a structure that we follow along the lines. So that was one thing. The other thing is what Middle States was my lifesaver, because I transitioned from ACICS. When I transitioned from ACICS to Middle States, ACICS was being clobbered by the federal government, and I thought that the end was very near. We had 18 months to do the transition, and so I scrambled to find somebody that would be of value to us, and Middle States was the group that was. So that was another thing. The third thing was the nice thing about Middle States is that I have a couple of staff members that go on visits to other schools for accreditation. And not only do they get 2 or 3 days away from me, but they come back with a value of, you know, what other schools are doing. They see what's happening. They get a nice feel for what's out there and what can happen and what should not happen maybe. So the nice thing about it is that in this industry, sometimes it's difficult to get always the straight and narrow. But when you're doing an accreditation visit, it's a lot easier to get the straight and narrow and to find out how schools are doing, and, you know, to take some of those things away from them, and, you know, bring it in and incorporate it into your business, which is very good. And the last thing which everybody talked about was that the Middle States flag, how valuable it is. You know, that people recognize that, especially in New York, you know, where my school is just surrounded by colleges, and so we compete with those. And they say, oh, well, Middle States also. Wow, that's amazing. You know, so, you know, we clarify that, you know, we're CESS, but, you know, we are Middle States. And they find that very powerful so we can work with them in a much easier format.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Henry, I believe we might have some questions from our attendees, so I will turn it back over to you. Those are all the questions that I have for our panelists today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Mort, and thank you again to our panelists for sharing their insight and experience. We do have some questions here in the chat, and I will read the questions out and designate them to the appropriate person to answer here. I'll start off. We have a couple of questions about Title IV, and I'm going to start off with the question. This would be applicable to Jeff and Jay. The question is, for the panelists that utilize the recognition process, did you experience any pauses in receiving Title IV funding while you were in transition from one accreditation agency to the other?
No. And that was a huge question for me. So the most seamless route I found to do that, and Jay, you can give your example as well. I you know, my accreditor that I was with, we were with a long time, and you know, that was a big concern. All right, are we going to have to go dark with Title IV? What's going to happen here? You know, all those things ran through my head. But as I talked to Henry and Dr. Mort and their staff, that didn't happen. The I found the best avenue to do that is you stay with your current accreditor as you're going through the candidate process. You'll get a recognition like a initial, and Dr. Moore, you can correct me on the terminology. It's the candidate recognition, and then you go to their meeting. And once, and when you have the candidate recognition, the U.S. Department of Education will recognize that, and you can add it to your e-car to hold your Title IV. So I found the smoothest way was to add it to my e-car, keep my other creditor, remain duly accredited, and then the meeting came up. It was passed, it was voted through, and about 2 days, 3 days. Oh, that's something else I want to mention too. Within 2-3 days, Middle State sent me a letter, not 2 months, 3 months, a month. They're very involved with their membership. So again, 2 days, I got that letter. I was able to add it to my e-car. Department of Ed came back and said, well, are you withdrawing the other accreditor? And I said, not at this point, because I wanted to give them the opportunity to, the time to withdraw, because they have a elongated process, possibly, to withdraw and voluntarily relinquish. And I wanted to make sure everything was represented on my e-car before, and PPA, before I would make, the relinquishment official. Once it was added, and I told them when I housed my Title IV, we had dual accreditation. I sent a voluntary relinquishment letter that was about, I think it was I gave the accreditor 60 days notice, just so I could be sure, because they sent a pretty demanding letter very quickly all of a sudden that we remove all their items off our advertisements, our websites, our materials, our all those items. And I gladly did. And so they were very particular about that. And things we had that, obviously you put your accreditor on everything and where you're licensed at statewide and things. So yeah, it was that was the most seamless process to do. Now the U.S. Department of Ed probably took the longer time. I'm sure it depends on what region you're in and how much staff they had on board and so forth. But Middle States, I'll give you another example. I wanted to add in a program. Got the state, taken care of. Depends on what state and what their standards are. But I was also able to add a program within a week. To be able to begin enrolling for it, because Middle States was able to look at that. The approval process was, at the executive director level or president level at that time, and then that just that didn't happen for me before. I would be waiting 3, 4, 5 months, because of staff, whatever the reason was. I don't, and I'm not speaking negative about anybody else, but I just found it very seamless with Middle States in accommodating the community, meeting the needs of the community from our advisory board meetings. That's why I bring up the programs, because these programs were necessary. It's what we were getting feedback from our stakeholders, and it's part of the standards. And I found that very enjoyable. It was a very enjoyable process, actually, and very swift. No dark on Title IV, meaning that we did not lose it for any period of time.
Thank you, Jeff. Here is another Title IV question, and Dr. Mort, it would be great if you could speak to this. Can you just share a bit about how Middle States works with schools, particularly schools that are new to accreditation, as they're preparing to receive Title IV funding?
Absolutely. Thank you, Henry. Just to kind of piggyback on what has been said already, as you're going through the process, being around for 135 years, the United States Department of Education knows us, they respect us. So what happens is, as you get towards the end of the process and you are heading towards accreditation, your associate vice president or your accreditation liaison will send the link so that you can establish your e-car, as Jeffrey said, once you have that candidacy letter from us. Once you and basically we'll walk you through how to set up the e-car process, and it's pretty seamless. It's basically we lead you to the link and provide any information that you need to sign up. Then it, as Jeffrey said, then it's in the hands of the United States Department of Education. But we do work with them. We know quite a few of the individuals working in just about all the regions now, which is nice. So we do work hand in glove, and it so far has been seamless from our end, and we hope it is seamless on your end as well. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question here. This question is about outcomes. So what are the outcome requirements that Middle States has? And I can speak to this a little bit, and then potentially our panelists can share a bit about their experience with these outcomes and reporting for these outcomes. So Middle States does have requirements for each program that a career and technical institution offers. We have a 70-70-70 rule, we call it. So 70% of students who start a program go on to complete that program. And then the second 70 is that 70% of students who complete that program go on to pass the licensing exam. And then the third 70 is that 70% of students who pass the licensing exam go on to get placed in that field within 150% of the total length of the program. And earlier an annual report was mentioned. That is where this data would be reported to Middle States. And that's where we would receive that information and discuss next steps with the school related to those outcome reporting. So I don't know if any of our panelists want to talk about their experience with those outcome requirements. If not, we can move on to the next question.
I'm sure that's a question for our area. I just wanted to chime in, Henry. That was a big concern of mine. How do you exactly, how does this framework work? What's the time frame that you have to do it in? And Middle States has some latitude to where you get to choose the 12 months of when you so for example, if you have a fiscal year ends August 31 and not 12/31, and that's how you track your data, they have the latitude to allow you and to explain why in your annual report you would track it for those 12 months year after year. The school defines what a withdrawal is and how they how they determine that, and what and where it may be, how they receive their educational credential, their official educational credential. So those concerns were alleviated as I went through the annual report process. And Dr. Mort even shared one, the template, so I could look at it ahead of time, which made it very easy for me to understand. That was a huge concern with the beauty school industry, because we find that sometimes students drop, come back within a few months, drop again, come back within a few months. It's just a typical practice of remarketing, and students having outside the LOAs and stuff. So I just found it very seamless. That doesn't happen all the time, but there are those exceptions that do happen, and I was very concerned about those. But it's very, very clean cut. It's a very smooth process, and the standards are the same for each school. So it's not, it doesn't put you, it's not going to put you in a situation where you can't meet those rates, because it is a higher standard, and there's a reason for that. And you want better student outcomes, and it actually makes your staff, more, there's more attention on it.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Jay, did you have something to add? Yeah, I think just piggyback on what Jeff was talking about at the outcomes. The government doesn't like our industry at all. And the nice thing about Middle States is one is that we have a very small group of career and technical schools that are being formed. And the expectation is to make sure that the schools that do come into the Middle States are going to meet those standards, and there aren't going to really be any big negative stories about schools that are accredited by Middle States. And that's a tremendous comfort level for me, because if I'm associated with a group of schools that have excellence in graduation rates, attendance rates, licensing rates, I mean, those are all positive things that I can brag about. So I think that's important to know that when you are interested in coming on board Middle States, you want to become a school that has the same high standards and shares that with everybody, and that will support you in that platform, or whatever you want to call it, and it's important.
Thank you, Jay.
Oh, one other thing, I'm sorry. I saw on the chat that will there be sort of like seminars or webinars, something like that, on attendance and maybe procedures or operations of schools in Middle States. And I think there is a little discussion about, because our group is growing, that we will try to do these meetings on a yearly basis for schools to keep them up to date and see what's going on and stuff like that. I hope I'm not talking out of turn.
No, but Henry, if I could add to what Jay was just talking about, we do offer webinars and seminars and workshops to our candidate members and our membership, and that is free of charge. There's no additional charge for you to attend a workshop. So as you're going through the candidacy process, or as you're going through reaccreditation, you will be able to meet with associate vice presidents, and we will actually be able to walk you through the process. And that's where we could also address the issues that Jay was just talking about with attendance, with how to put a plan for growth and improvement together, things along those lines. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you. Wow. So we are just about at time here, and we did have some questions that we were not able to get to today, and I apologize for that, but we will be sure to follow up with you after the webinar today to make sure that you get your questions answered. So I'm going to go ahead and actually put the panelists' contact information, as well as Dr. Mort and my contact information, up on the screen. And you can feel free to jot down our info if you'd like. Again, we will be following up with everyone who attended today to see if you would be interested in receiving an interest packet from Middle States. And we'd also be happy to schedule an individual call with any of you to answer any individual questions that you have as well. So with that, I will leave this slide up on the screen for another minute or so. But I want to thank our panelists again for taking the time to be here and share their expertise with this group. And thank you to you all for taking some time out of your busy day to attend. We hope that you learned something new about the Middle States Association, and we look forward to the potential to working with many of you in the future. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day.